Alright, so welcome back to part 3 of Dominion Menagerie. So for this video, we're going to get started with the horses. The card, or the action cards, I should say, that work with horses. So, what do horses do? So let's just go over the horse first. So here's the horse. This is not in the supply. So there are 30 horses that are not in the supply. So whenever you play with horse, you'll play with all 30 of them. So there's quite a few. You'll most likely will not run out of horses, I don't think. It's not likely. Because whenever you play a horse, you'll get +2 cards, you'll get +1 action, and you'll return this to its pile. So horses are going to be coming and going. You're going to play them, they're going to go to your, they're going to go back to their pile, which isn't in the supply. You're going to gain more horses, you're going to play them, they're going to go back. Everybody's going to be doing that. It's going to be, you better keep that horse supply pile nearby, because you're going to be doing it quite a bit. Now, there is one thing to note. Now, this is one of the reasons why waves are so interesting. So, you can play any action card you want as a way. So, like, for instance, I could play any action card I wanted as Way of the Camel. So, if I was to play Horse as Way of the Camel, then I would, instead of doing that, I would exile a gold from the supply, right? And I wouldn't get the 2 cards, and I wouldn't get the +1 action, and then I also would not return this to its pile. So that's one way of keeping your horses around for a while, but still using them as another way of playing an action card. So that's kind of interesting. And there's a lot of different ways that give you cards and money and actions, etc., etc. So that's, pretty cool. Now, so that's really cool. So let's go over the actual cards that give you horses. So here's our second treasure card. There are only 2 treasure cards in this expansion. There are no new victory cards in this expansion, which is okay. I think we've got a lot anyway. But this is basically a copper because it's going to give you a treasure. But then when you play this, you'll gain a horse onto your deck. That's really cool. Get rid of all your coppers. Get a bunch of supplies. Get 7 supplies. Well, you probably won't get 7 supplies unless you're playing with 2 people. I still doubt you would be able to do that. But get a bunch of these to replace your coppers, and then every time you play them, you get to put a horse onto your deck. And it's still basically like a copper, right? So that's really cool. I like that card a lot. Then we have Slay. As an action, you gain 2 horses. Then when you gain a card, you may discard this to put that card onto your hand or onto your deck. So if you don't want to play this as the action to gain 2 horses, or if you ran out of action cards and you didn't play this one, when you gained a card, or bought the card for that matter, you could discard this. You could react to the gaining, to the buying, and then show everybody you've got the Slay, discard it, the Slay, that is, and then you would get to put the card that you just got into your hand or onto your deck. So if you did it during your turn and you gained this, if you gained a card during your turn, you could discard this to put the card you gained into your hand. Or if you did it during your buy phase, obviously doing it to your deck would probably be in your better interest for sure. So that's really cool. And another thing, I don't know if I said this, but there are 5 reaction cards in this expansion. 5. So there's 4 attacks and there's 5 reactions. You know what? I don't think there's ever been an expansion that had 5 reactions in it. Hinterlands had 3. Hinterlands had 3 reactions. But Menagerie's got that beat because it's got 5 reaction cards. Really, really cool. Alright, and that's definitely a different type of reaction for sure. Alright, so, or sort of anyways. The rest of the reactions are actually more different than this one. Then we have Scrap. Trash a card from your hand. Choose a different thing per treasure it costs. So if you trashed, I don't know, an estate, well, you get to do 2 different things because it costs 2 money, right? So then you get to do 2 of these options if that was the case. +1 card, +1 action, +1 buy, +1 treasure, gain a silver, or gain a horse. So you get, you could gain a silver, you could gain a horse. You have to choose a different thing, though. You couldn't gain 2 horses, for instance. But you could gain a silver, you could gain a horse if you were to trash an estate with the scrap. If you trashed a better card, like a gold, Ooh, that would be 6, right? So you'd get to do 6 of these things, and here's the thing, though. You'd have to do all of these one time. So obviously, that would be the maximum you could trash was a gold, because then you do all of these, and they all have to be different, right? So you'd get a card, you'd get an action, you get a buy, you get a treasure, you gain a silver, and you gain a horse for trashing that gold. Is it worth it? Maybe. Maybe that could be worth it. I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's really cool. I like that. All right. Then we have 3 action cards here that are costing 4 that work with horses. So here we have Groom. Gain a card costing up to 4. Treasure. Okay, so gain a card costing up to 4. If it's an action card, gain a horse. If it's a treasure card, you'll gain a silver. If it's a victory card, you'll get +1 card and you'll get +1 action. That's a pretty cool card. So only if you gain an action card with the Groom would you... So that's cool. If you gain an action card, you gain a horse too. That's really cool. Okay. Then we have... Oh boy, this one's a hard one for me to pronounce. Hostelry, something like that. Hostelry. Let's just go with that. Hostelry. Okay, you get a card, you get 2 actions. So it's very similar to a village, right? And there are villages in this expansion. That's very basic, for sure, for a village. Then when you gain this, you may discard any number of treasures revealed to gain that many horses. So if you had some good treasures in your hand, you know, let's say you had a couple of silvers and you had a few coppers, you could, you know, use just the 2 silvers to purchase this and then keep those coppers in your hand, and then you could reveal those coppers, let's say it was 3, then you could gain 3 horses. So that's really cool. Okay, then we have Cavalry. Gain 2 horses. When you gain this, +2 cards, +1 buy, and if it's your buy phase, return to your action phase. So that's kind of cool. So it kind of reminds me of that one card from Prosperity. Not Prosperity, sorry. From Empires. That was sort of like a village, sort of. I can't remember it now, but it was in Empires, and whenever you bought it, you would go back to your action phase. And so with this one, you also get to go back to your action phase if you gain this during your buy phase. And then you get 2 cards and you get that extra buy. And so maybe you'd get a couple more treasures and you could maybe even buy something else. Who knows? Because you'd get an extra buy. So that's kind of cool. I like that. That's a pretty interesting card. All right. Then we have 2 5 costing cards that work with the horses. And obviously there are events that also work with horses, etc., etc. And I think there's also a way as well. But we will go over those in a separate video. Okay. So we have Livery. Well, when you play it, you get 3 treasure. This turn, when you gain a card costing 4 or more, you gain a horse. So only when you gain cards that cost 4 or more will you gain a horse. But you get 3 money when you play it, so it's probable that you will buy a card, you know, that will be worth more than 4. Probable. So that's kind of cool. Gain a horse. Then we have the Paddock. It's going to give you 2 treasure. You're going to gain 2 horses, and then you're going to get +1 action per empty supply pile. So this is a good one to play at the end of the game when there's a pile or 2 that's empty. You could gain a couple of actions, or at least 1 action for 1 empty supply pile, right? And then you could still play other cards, obviously. 2 treasure, gain 2 horses, get an extra action because there's 1 empty supply pile. That's pretty cool. Paddock. And that's basically it. Like I said, there's still some cards, or I should say events, that work with the horses, etc., etc. But that pretty much covers all of the cards that work with horses, including, obviously, the horse itself. That's not in the supply. Alright, so we'll be back with you guys in the next video with the other action cards.